I still remember the way their voices grated across the air that morning, slick with authority, unyielding, almost bored. I was 22, fingers splayed nervously over the worn cover of my notebook, as the committee of professors sat behind their heavy table at the university. The room smelled like stale coffee and the faint industrial tang of cleaner, cold in the fading light of March. "Mr. Gallego, help me understand," Chairwoman Torres said, lifting her glasses. Her mouth held a tired crease. "You propose an app that, quote, optimizes workflow and communication in creative teams." She glanced down at my summary, lips pressed thin. "We've reviewed your prototype. But frankly, this sounds like a solution in search of a problem." Her words echoed, solution in search of a problem. I felt my palms sweating against the fake leather seat. Outside, students wandered the courtyard. I heard laughter from someone passing, muffled by the thick glass. "You know, companies already use project management tools. You mentioned Slack, yet here you are with your SaaS, Mercurio. You want to leave your master's program early for this." To her left, Professor Salinas looked over his reading glasses. "We have a duty to be honest. Building a company is not a creative writing exercise." "If every engineer with a revolutionary idea ran off half-cocked," he shrugged, the implication hanging. I could feel heat crawling up my neck, shame mixing with something stubborn beneath my ribs. There's a gap for multidisciplinary teams. Art directors, writers, product people, they're in 5 different tools. There's friction. Mercurio unifies that. Torres smiled politely. "Our advice is to finish your thesis, gain industry experience. The market is saturated with tools like these. Madrid is not Silicon Valley. It's time to be realistic." Realistic, I sat there, shoulders rigid, pretending to scribble notes. Part of my mind retreated to the tiled floor, the strange pale heat of the sun bleeding through the blinds. My heart ached not from their words but a sudden longing for home, my father's basement, the paint stains on his old drafting table, my mother's quiet humming. The committee's recommendation was unanimous: rejected, not viable, no support for leave. I caught Professor Salinas' quiet sigh as I left, maybe pity, maybe exasperation. I pushed through the corridors feeling scraped down, the cold air biting my cheeks. My phone vibrated, my cousin Alvaro, his message, "How'd it go, Elon Musk?" I forced a laugh and replied with a thumbs up. He fired back a string of astronaut gifs at dinner that night in our apartment in Lavapiés. I told my younger sister Lucia. She didn't look up from her phone. "Maybe they're right," she said. "Everyone I know wants to do something digital now. There's like a million apps. Didn't someone in your bootcamp drop out too? Maybe just be grateful you got this far." My parents tried to hide their concern behind gentle suggestions. "You work so hard, Hijo, but we know it's hard for people like us. Remember your uncle's bakery? It closed after 3 years. Better to aim for steady work." My mother stroked my hair. "You'll find your way." I spent the following months paralyzed, shuffling between university deadlines and my windowless room, the city's sounds distant, a restless hum beneath everything. At night I coded, piecing together Mercurio with jittery, hungry energy, believing stubbornly in a world that might want it. When I launched the prototype to a handful of artist friends, only 2 bothered to test it, and both told me awkwardly that it was confusing or that their agencies already used Trello or Dropbox. I went to meetups handing out business cards no one wanted. At one, a recruiter told me, "You programmers just want to be Jeff Bezos until you realize how many Bezoses there aren't." The laughter around the table stuck to me like oil. I kept building, watching my student loan debt spiral, asking for deadlines that always seemed to arrive too soon. My friends slipped into 9-to-5 jobs, started posting photos at restaurants I couldn't afford. Lucia got work at a real estate agency. She left early, returned late, stopped asking about that startup thing. I decided to move out when my father found me sleeping at the keyboard one morning, drool on the spacebar. "Esteban, this isn't a life," he murmured quietly. I heard my mother crying in the hallway that night. The new flat in Teteran was cramped, the walls too thin, but it was mine. Days blurred into nights. I coded, fell asleep on the floor, woke to building site noise next door. Each rejection, venture firms, accelerators, agency clients, felt like a cold stone in my stomach. After the 50th no, I stopped telling family and friends about my progress. I lied to Lucia, telling her I was that was supposed to mean, but underneath the exhaustion was a kind of steel. Small encouragements flickered. A design student in Barcelona wrote to say Mercurio made collaboration easier. I convinced my boss to try it. "It's clearer than our process before," she wrote. I held on to that for days. Slowly, after yet another desperate redesign, I posted a tutorial to Reddit. One morning, I woke to 100 emails, dozens from creative agencies in Spain, some from Berlin and London, asking if they could beta test. Overnight, it seemed word spread. Someone tweeted, a tech blog in Malaga picked up the story. A tiny agency, Agua Baja Studio, became my first paying client, €10 a month. I called my father, voice shaking, to tell him. He congratulated me but quietly. You are very stubborn, Hijo, he said. That is good and sometimes very hard. I heard pride, mixed with the cautious reserve of someone who'd seen too many dreams wilting under Madrid's fierce sun. With my first client, I pitched again for investment, again dozens of rejections. I was too small, too Spanish, not in the right city, not moving fast enough. But small agencies kept signing up, some by word of mouth, others from forums or Instagram. I scraped together a living, barely teaching coding on the side. At every Christmas dinner, I felt their skepticism settle on me like dust. My grandparents would ask, still making that computer thing? Lucia would mention her friend's boyfriend who'd just been promoted at BBVA. I played along, tried to smile, felt my heart ache with every forced answer. Years ticked by, every step uncertain. And then, one afternoon, 4 years since that committee rejection, I got an email from a Madrid design firm. We run a fashion festival and need a system for hundreds of collaborators. Are you open to meetings? Something shifted. Within a month, they became my first major client. Mercurio was white-labeled for festivals, then for co-working spaces, then for cross-border agencies. More companies came. Suddenly, journalists wanted quotes. Podcasts asked me about Spain's future of work. I took a salary, something modest but real. My name was printed in a tech magazine in Barcelona. The first time I saw Mercurio open on a stranger's laptop in a coffee shop, I ducked out nervously, then burst into tears on the sidewalk. And then, a surprise, the university where I had failed, writing to ask if I would speak at a panel on local talent in the global digital economy. The day of the panel was crisp and bright, orange with late spring. I had rehearsed my speech for days, nervously adjusting my blazer in the mirror. The walk to the university was a blur. My hands trembled as I signed in at the front desk. I watched the old white buildings slip past, the courtyard filled with soft voices and cigarette smoke. When I entered the main hall, I caught sight of Professor Salinas, thinner and grayer, but unmistakable, chatting quietly with Chairwoman Torres. She looked almost exactly the same, her posture just as precise. When I stepped to the stage, I felt the old tension in my stomach. I counted the seconds, willed my hands to be still. The moderator introduced me. Founder and CEO of Mercurio Technologies, one of Madrid's fastest-growing SaaS platforms for creative collaboration, used by over 10,000 professionals worldwide. The microphone felt too light in my palm. I told my story honestly, the rejections, the skepticism, the loneliness of pursuing something most people called ridiculous. I did not try to sweeten it. You will be mocked, I said quietly, and you will want to give up. And you can, but if you do not, you become someone else, a person with steel in their heart and tenderness they hide from no one. I walked them through my failures and pivots, spoke about the first client, the months with only instant ramen and cold radiators, about teaching coding for cash, about the times I nearly quit. I showed them the numbers, client growth curves, testimonials from Germany, Canada, Chile, screenshots of Mercurio running at the biggest festivals in Spain. And then, from the shadows of the crowd, Professor Salinas raised his hand, voice careful but clear. Mr. Gallego, he said, forgive me if I sound surprised. I remember rejecting you. I recall thinking you were very naive, a dreamer, and not in the way that succeeds. He paused. The audience was silent. But it is clear vision counts for more than realism sometimes. Could you show us a demonstration? His words dropped gently, but I heard in them the old, careful skepticism, now mixed with something more thoughtful. I nodded. On the projection screen, I opened the dashboard. Invitations from the world's biggest fashion festival, timelines drawn in clean blocks, comments from users in 5 languages. I clicked into a live backstage chat, over 200 project members using Mercurio in real time, their icons popping up from 3 continents. The room filled with an audible shift, a new weight. The moderator smiled. I looked out at the faces, students, professors, strangers. I caught Chairwoman Torres' gaze. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, not quite regret. Salinas removed his glasses. I underestimated you, he said quietly, so only those in front could hear. But the satisfaction blooming inside me was sharp, clean, not revenge, just release. Later that week, I went back home. We were having dinner, my mother fried croquettes, my father poured Tinto de Verano, Lucia arguing about whether to buy or rent. I pulled up the magazine article on my phone, sliding it across the table. My father read, squinting. Lucia did too, silent for a long moment. Then my mother pressed her hand to her mouth and started to cry, soft tears that fell into her lap. "Hijo, is this really you?" she whispered, voice shaking. "It's all of us," I said softly. "Every time you let me fail, every time you worried but let me try again." My father swallowed, then pulled me awkwardly into an embrace, his aftershave sharp, the pressure of his arms not quite as reserved as I remembered. We finished dinner, my sister met my eyes tender but with something new, respect, almost an apology. "Maybe you are the stubborn one," she said, but this time it worked. Afterwards I walked out onto the small balcony, the city buzzing below, vespers darting past shuttered tapas bars, the white moon hanging low over Atocha. 4 years ago I had left this city angry, raw, my dream a joke behind closed doors and WhatsApp groups. Now the proof was real, concrete, undeniable. I felt finally that I had returned not just as a survivor but as someone seen. And as the city's lights melted into the sky, I let myself feel both the softness and the steel inside me, tenderness for what I'd lost along the way and for what I'd kept. For the first time I stood there without apology, knowing Madrid would never again be just a city where dreams withered in committee rooms. It would also be the city where at last, something impossible, something ridiculous, was no longer a punchline but a beginning.